So my kind of out there prediction, and I guess I'm categorizing this as I think it could make the team better, but I don't think they're going to necessarily do it. But who knows? Is the Knicks trading for Lonzo Ball? So for context, I mean, we talk about timelines all the time, right? The idea of, well, Julius Randle's 26 going 27 and all the guys are in their early 20s. So if you get someone who's 23 years old in Lonzo Ball, you have someone who is perfectly in between the two. So whether you want to go older, that's great. Whether you want to go younger, still fits perfectly. You also get matching rights. That's important. I think a lot of people with restricted free agents, again, just think, well, we'll throw them a big offer and it'll be fine. It really doesn't work that way that often. Bogdanovich was one of the more recent case studies of one that actually does happen. And as you can see, it's not going over super well. Or Tim Hardaway Jr., when the Knicks did that. Obviously not the same player, but the same idea of you are overpaying and making a guy who is better in a specific role, and you're elevating him in that role to a position where maybe he's not best suited to be in that spot. So here's the deal on Lonzo Ball. About 37% of his shots have come on spot ups, and he's in the 77th percentile. Reggie Bullock has had 37% of his shots as well coming in spot up, and he's in the 59th percentile. We talked about how Bullock is just not that guy. This is an insane improvement. Just from what that role is and how Lonzo would fill into it. Because he's not a point guard, as we've both talked about. That's just not what he is. I'd say that also shooting 38.7% on 7.8 3-point attempts per game, including 45% from the corner, which is 67th percentile. That's pretty good. Anything you want to add before I continue?
I want this to be a real thing.
All right.
I shall want it to be a real thing.
We'll leave it at that. I'll continue. We'll come back to it.
I don't. If you're David Griffin and you're New Orleans and you have Zion and you have Brandon and you have now Lonzo shooting, is he above 40% or is he in the 39 still?
From three?
From three.
He's 37. No, he's 38.7.
Okay. So we're close. He's close to 39.
I know what you're going to say. Obviously, we'll get there. No.
What's he doing it for?
Well, that's the thing. It all comes down to cost because as we talked about, the Pelicans have good picks. The idea then would be this 3-team trade that you would maybe want to do where it's like, are the Knicks taking on bad salary and Lonzo Ball? What are they sending out? Are they, as a result of taking on something else in addition to that, does what they send out go down because they're taking on a bad asset? I agree that it's part of the package, but the idea of also like, well, what are you doing with your first round picks? Because as we've talked about with the Mavs pick, if that is decreasing in value, at what point do the Knicks say like, well, this is completely off limits no matter what? It's not so much advising that that's what the Knicks trade, but the idea of like, well, if the Pelicans would be wanting some sort of compensation for it, and if you're looking at a pick that, as of right now, is actually 18th versus the Knicks pick, which is 16th, I want to say. Oh, no, it's 20th, and the Knicks pick is 18th, I think. So that, as that pick goes up and up, you still want to hold on to your picks for sure. It's the idea of like, well, is Lonzo Ball worth that pick? Would you say that pick is worth becoming Lonzo Ball? But just for a little bit more context,
I have to say this because I always do. This is my line. It's not about whether the pick is worth Lonzo Ball. It's whether the pick is worth paying Lonzo Ball $80 million for the next 4 seasons.
Yes and no. Because again, if you had to poach him from the Pelicans, you have to overpay to get him. So
then you have to overpay again a second time this summer.
No, but not necessarily, because if you hold his rights and his matching rights, then it doesn't mean that a team is going to try to swoop in because they recognize that he's not going to be able to be poachable anyway.
It doesn't mean
yes. I understand that there's a team that wants to jump in there anyway, but if they hold his rights and trade for him, then they're going to keep him. I get what you're saying. I know if the
Knicks trade for him and give up whatever the hell they give up to get him, and then it's July for whatever the date is this year, July 1st, and Chicago is like, here's your 4-year, $85 million. Here's your Van Fleet contract. The Knicks have to match that because they just traded for him.
Well, of course, it's a sunk cost, but you can also operate on the idea of, well, what if they don't do that? What if Chicago says, well, why do we want to tie up our money knowing that we're not going to get him at all anyway? So why are we
This
going to give him a
market
competitor?
sucks.
It doesn't matter if the market sucks, John, because
Yes, it does. It matters if it sucks because it means teams like Chicago are going to come to Lonzo Ball and be like, here, take
and
all of
what
our
happens
money.
if they don't get a restricted free agent and the entire market is turned upside down and now they've walked away with no one? That is a problem because the restricted free agency happens at the end of unrestricted free agency, essentially, because you have to wait until after the moratorium.
You're saying, what if Chicago doesn't get anyone? Like, then they'd be disappointed. Right. Okay, who else? And that's my point. There is so little out there for teams to feel like, to me, if I'm a team like Chicago, I'm just using them as an example because they've been linked to Lonzo Ball. Like, I could see them operating under the premonition, like, okay, we're going to go for Lonzo. If we don't get it, there's not going to be anyone who's going to sign in the next however many days, 5 days, that's going to make us regret at least giving us it a shot. And at worst case scenario, what's probably going to happen is we're going to screw New York over because we're going to make them pay 40% more for Lonzo Ball than they want to. Like, I
understand what you're saying, obviously. Yeah.
And you just don't think it's going to happen.
No, I look, I'm not saying it won't happen, period, but it's the idea of that they're not going to necessarily tie their money up to the point where it's like what do they walk away with if they don't get Lonzo?
Nothing, which is fine with them because there's nothing else in this.
But not necessarily if they want to upgrade their team and try to keep Zach LaVine and say we're building around you. What happens if you're Zach LaVine and you look at your team? It's like, okay, your one play was to get Lonzo Ball and you knew you weren't going to get him because of the fact that great job. You made the Knicks pay,
they could still
$4 million more annually. Well, that doesn't help me right now because the fact that I don't have anyone right next to me who can help me win. What does that say?
That's okay.
I'm just saying, because then you'd have to trade for help, right? Or then you're looking at Zach LaVine and you're hoping, okay, well, maybe, just maybe, you'll be cool with the fact that we didn't get you anyone to be your sidekick. It sends a bad message to him. I don't disagree with the play. I get what you're saying.
That's
but
fair.
So anyways, again, like just about Lonzo because I do agree. It's the whole point of acquiring him is it costs something. But then you have to keep him. You have to keep him on board, and you do risk other teams that are doing that. A team like the Spurs could easily, well, maybe not the Spurs because they're pretty good on wings and guards and whatever. But maybe a team like the Thunder, if they really wanted to do something, they could. I don't see them doing it either. But the idea of it just takes one. Just takes one. But again, I do think that for those who maybe think Lonzo's not necessarily worth it, he is a phenomenal defender. He is frequently taking on the hardest defensive assignments in the NBA. Recently, last I saw it was end of February. He took on the fourth toughest assignments in the NBA behind, I think it was Dort, Mikal Bridges, and Gary Harris. So clearly he's that type, who can help. He's a playmaker. He can help in transition. He can get guys unlocked. Like Mitch, for example, is someone who he's not able to really do much in transition because the Knicks are slowing down the pace. And he was so good in transition last year. So getting him activated when he's healthy, that could help a lot. So I'm with you. I think the idea of getting him, it's going to be tough. That's why this is in the kind of out there prediction because he's a great fit, but there's a lot that would go into it, which is trading for him and having to pay him. So that's why he's kind of out there.
I like it. Listen, I like it.